the final one of these sort of 5 pillars of Sam Harris thinking. The big one is you're a neocon.
Right.
So I think we should define neocon first. You want to handle that, or you want me to?
Well, I think it means many things to many people, but it's the attitude toward foreign policy that I think most was canonized by people like Richard Pearl and Paul Wolfowitz in the run-up to the first our invasion of Iraq after 9/11. This idea that we can go in a very muscular way and just create nations along democratic lines, and that our foreign policy should be very aggressive, and we'll fight them over there so we don't have to fight them here. And I think we've all, I mean, I was never for the Iraq War. I was never vocally against it either. I just was, at every moment through that process, I was just painfully aware that I had no idea what to think about it, apart from it looked very risky, and it looked like a frank distraction from the war in Afghanistan, which did seem to me to be necessary and seemed like something we were probably going to botch. One thing you can say against neoconservatism, which is that it is idealistic to a degree that now seems not at all sustainable. I mean, we should have learned a lesson at this point, which is we don't do this very well. We don't nation build very well. We have a political environment where we just can't stay committed to these things, even if we were doing it well. You know, we view everything through a 4-year presidential lens,
right?
An election cycle, and these are multi-decade commitments if we're going to do this well. So. But Iraq looks like a disaster, and it's looked like a disaster for most of the time, apart from 15 minutes there after the surge. And I certainly don't consider myself a neocon. I just think we have to be honest about, in ethical terms, what is really going on in the world. If you're going to say that we never should have gone into Iraq, which I think is a reasonable thing to say, and it was a reasonable thing to say then, it was only decent to admit how depressing a claim this really is. I mean, so we're saying that Iraq is a place that requires a psychopathic thug to run it. I mean, given the level of religious sectarianism, given the fact that when you remove a butcher like Saddam Hussein, everyone starts killing their neighbor, right? Which is in fact what happened, and which is in fact the political and religious reality we underestimated when we walked in there thinking that they were just going to put flowers in the barrels of our guns and welcome us as liberators. So it's a very depressing thing to admit about the state of a place like Iraq. But I think we should all. I mean, I view Iraq as initially when Saddam was there as a kind of hostage crisis. I mean, you have a totally illegitimate regime run by barbarians, keeping tens of millions of people hostage, and so the people who criticize the war based on saying that it was a sovereign government and we should never have gone in there, because it's not. That's just a failure to engage with the moral reality, which is this was a terrible place to live, and if we could have done something to help these people, we should have. And there are many countries that fit that description. I mean, North Korea is one of them. If there would be some way to depose that regime and liberate the North Koreans, we should do it. Now, we know that it would just be a bloody mess if we tried, and we're learning that more and more in these other societies. But and so neoconservatism, I don't know what its current state is now, but I can't imagine anyone is, even Wolfowitz or Pearl is, I can't imagine any of them are as sanguine about the possibility of building a nation anywhere from scratch.
Right, that's actually a great point. Like, are these guys still believing that idea? Do they think if we went back into Iraq right now, would it be any better? I somehow doubt it.
No, I mean, and but the idea that we created ISIS by going into Iraq, that's also just delusional. I mean, the set of ideas that gives us ISIS, that is the set of ideas and the level of sectarianism that gave us the civil war that we could barely contain, that drove us out of Iraq. And that set of ideas, in one or another degree, has been animating a subset of the Muslim world for a very long time.
Right. So this is where I think some of your critics would say, well, you're blaming things more on religion than the geopolitics, because had we never gone to Iraq, Saddam would still be there, and at least ISIS would be controlled. But basically, you're saying this thing sort of would have bubbled up one way or another. Is that?
Well, no. No, but if ISIS, if those religious sectarian commitments were controlled by a dictator, that seems to me an intrinsically unstable situation. At some point, they're going to bubble up. But let's just admit how depressing that remedy is.
Right.
And we're talking about someone who's got torture chambers running full time, and he's got sons who show up at people's weddings and rape the bride, and I mean, it's just a playground for sociopaths. If that's what it takes to modulate the Sunni Shia internecine animosity, okay. That does not exonerate religion, right? Yeah. I mean, it does not exonerate that level of commitment to divisive theology. And so it's, and there, I think it's I think it is totally appropriate to be humble about how hard it is to help people in these circumstances. But if you look at a place like Rwanda, right, where Clinton's one regret was that we didn't do more to help or to prevent that genocide. And if you look at a total failure to intervene and the resulting massacre of nearly 1 million people, and you say, okay, that was something we should not play that hand precisely that way again, right? We should do something differently. We should have intervened. Mm-hmm. Well, then, what do you think we should do to what's happening to these Yazidis under the Islamic State? They've got people being crucified by the side of the road. We've got thousands of sex slaves. We've got gays being thrown from rooftops. So, do we intervene or not? I think it's not obvious that there's anything we can do in each one of these circumstances to help people. But the idea that you are a moral monster to even think that we should intervene is deeply suspect. Yeah.